Welcome to Good Game Edmonton. I'm Cory Sellar, and today we're kicking off something new. This is PartyChat, a new quarterly update presented by Digital Alberta and yours truly, where we aim to amplify what people are working on in the interactive digital media space across the province. Entering the chat for this update, I have Amber Scott from Only by Midnight, Tuncer Deniz from Shifty Games, and Chris Entwistle from Digital Alberta. Now, to kick things off, Digital Alberta recently laid out 4 pillars shaping the work ahead for the organization. I'll let Chris break it down further a little bit here, as he's on the DA's board of directors in his spare time, and his full-time gig is heading up game product at Artificial.Agency. Chris, what can you tell us about these pillars, plus a little about the organization while we're here?
Absolutely. Thanks, Cory, and thanks for doing this. Just to let everybody know, this is the first podcast I've ever recorded. So this is going to be an experience for me, but I know it's a great intro. Digital Alberta have been supporting the interactive digital media scene for decades now, and we're really happy to be continuing on that work. I think that the important thing that we've realized as we move into 2025 and beyond is that there's a real opportunity for Alberta to become an incredible powerhouse based around what's happening in the game scene right now. There's a real push towards kind of indies and AA studios, and that's where a lot of the investment is focused. And so we've shaped our pillars around what we think the ecosystem needs right now. And those are 4 very simple things: attention, craft, business, and opportunity. And so each one of these is kind of an important part of building any video game, but we see the video game sector here in Alberta as having some unique advantages and challenges in each one of these areas that we want to try and kind of push our strengths and kind of remove our weaknesses. And so attention is the ability for us to both get attention for our projects, our developers, and also the province. Alberta has some of the best post-secondary in Canada. We have some fantastic technology companies. We have some great games companies. And yet we still are kind of punching below our weight in terms of our ability to kind of get the message out there sometimes. With craft, very simply, is we want to make better game developers. We have, again, some incredible people here, and connecting them with other developers and kind of upskilling ourselves within the province is a major push. Business is an obvious one. Video games is, the joke is, how do you make $1 million in video games? You start with $1 billion. And so what we want to do is we want to try and kind of teach people, the basics of setting up a studio. How do you protect your IP? Your IP is an asset when you go to, take an investment. How have you making sure your business is set up correctly and avoiding some of the pitfalls before you hit them. And then finally, opportunity. Opportunity is the idea that both people want to break into the video game, especially post-secondary. How do you do it? How do you get into, especially right now where things are a little bit up in the air, have been for the last 18 months. But also, there are so many opportunities for video game developers here, especially in the kind of indie and AA scene to take. And we want to try and kind of connect people with those opportunities. For example, I keep talking about the Discord embedded SDK. 226 million Discord users, and there's a game portal window right there in the application, and all you need to do is ship a WebGL game from Unity, which a lot of our developers in this province can do. So trying to let people know where those opportunities are, the next wave of games and what technologies exist, is a part of our remit. So that's kind of in a nutshell. I'm sure we'll go into detail, but that's what Digital Alberta is aiming to do this year.
Love it. Thanks for that, Chris. Really appreciate that. And fun factoid for everyone out there. I was actually the social media guy for Digital Alberta for a few years ago and sat on the board briefly. So it feels like I continue to stay plugged in to the different areas of the innovation ecosystem, and nice to be able to do this with all of you today. So thanks so much again for joining me on this. Now, let's kind of go back and look at the start of the year, and feel free to jump in once we kind of get through some of these headlines. We had DICE and GDC this year, and the themes with that seem to be pretty clear around sustainability. Everyone's trying to do more with less. That's when AI tools start to come into the conversation, into the workflows, and they're helping with that. But let's be real. For some, whether it's players, devs, yourselves on this call, not everyone's necessarily sold on the AI generated stuff, at least not yet, maybe. It's a tool. It's not a shortcut. So I just want to open it up right away on your thoughts on using AI while my cat gets fed for lunch.
I was wondering what that noise was.
Yeah, I knew that was going to happen.
I mean,
Yeah.
I could start off.
Yes, please, Tuncer.
Yeah, AI is a really kind of useful tool if you know how to use it, right? And so, in my daily life of a CEO of a company, I do use it to kind of like ease some tasks that I have to do, right? Be it like an employment letter or an email or a transcript of a meeting. Those kind of things are pretty helpful for me. But also, like, as kind of also the project lead on this game, you can get a lot of kind of cool things out of AI that just either ideas or images or things that you can share with a team that'll help you kind of get your vision across. Right. So that's the way that we've been using it. I should say I've been using it. The team itself, there's new tools coming out that can help you with, for example, motion capture. The animation team uses kind of some of the AI tools for motion capture. A lot of kind of the cleaning up of mocap and things like that. Using AI tools for that is super helpful. I know on the programming team, they're doing kind of the same thing, reviewing their code, et cetera, et cetera. The art team has been a little hesitant to kind of look into it, admittedly so, but it's something that I think, as time evolves, it's just going to be a natural process to use those tools to, again, enhance productivity, not necessarily replace people, but if you can use those tools to enhance productivity, it's a good thing, right? Of course, you hear from a lot of people of like, oh, this game was made with AI, and there's like a certain negative tone behind it, which is understandable because no one wants these jobs to be replaced. But that said, it's a tool that we're going to have to use over time, and dare I say it, we have to get used to that kind of, that mentality that game studios, especially the larger ones, are going to have to start using in order to be competitive, right? So I think over time, and I'll shut up after this, over time, it's going to become a norm, right? Like change is difficult, but it's going to happen.
Exactly. Amber.
I agree with the most part that AI is to some degree inevitable. And I think what's the most important for studios, especially small ones that are very limited maybe in their capabilities or the resources that they have, is to understand that you have to have a strategy. It may be that you are completely 100% on board with AI. It may be that you're completely 100% against it, or you may be undecided or like it in some situations and not in others. But pretending that it's not going to affect the industry or hoping if you ignore it long enough, it will just go away, it isn't going to be viable long term. So sitting down and thinking critically about what you want your studio values to be, how you want AI to fit into those, if at all, and coming up with a plan to reach your business goals, however it's like with any other resource. That's going to be very important to running your business successfully. And when you do have multiple people on your team who may have conflicting ideas about how to use AI or where to draw the line with using AI, is it okay in conceptualization maybe, but not production, or is it okay for writing but not for art? Where you kind of pick out those differences, that's really important for leadership to have a very clear idea of how they want to handle that with their team and how to move forward, I suppose, toward the business goals.
Chris, anything
Well, as
to
the
add?
person who works at an AI company is my day job, I have strong opinions about AI. But I
course.
agree with everything that's been said, especially Amber, when you talk about needing a strategy. I think that, being upfront about where you want to and where you don't want to use AI is really important. I think that what we've seen in the game space is that there is a backlash towards anything that looks AI generated. We've seen, with the Steam page, kind of like images getting pulled and then changed back to something that's more traditional or done by a concept artist. I think there's definitely some amount of kind of like nervousness, especially from video game players, because they want to be seen supporting the indie scene and the developers that they work that they know. I think on the other side, I remember the moment that AI changed for me in my head from being this kind of black box to this being super useful thing. And so the little Copilot like icon in the bottom right of Windows 11. I had to do something really mundane. I think I had to move like 800 files from one place to another, put them in the right folder, and rename them at the same time. I started doing it by hand, and I was thinking, hang on, this is absolutely a thing that a machine can do. And so I just asked Copilot, hey, can you write me a Python script that just looks at these images, connects to ChatGPT, figures out what it is, and then kind of puts it in the right folder? And it was like, yeah, sure. And 30 lines of Python came out. I ran it and it did it. I was like, wow, that's just saved me an afternoon of mindless tedium. And then that was kind of like the beginning of my journey. That must have been maybe about a year and a half ago. I mean, obviously I was working for an AI company, so I got to see minor miracles every day, but that's when it became really useful to me, because it just saved me some time on something that I was trying to do. And I think that another incredible stat out there, so we talk about kind of like, how players are a little bit nervous about AI and generated AI. But when you look at chatgpt.com, the website, about 6 months ago, it was the 11th most visited website in the world. And right now it's the 5th. So in 6 months, it's gone up 6 places. And if you look at the top 10 websites by market share, every single one in the top 9, or the other 9, have all gone down by, a percentage point or 2, and ChatGPT has gone up by 13.7. And so when you start looking at kind of what the silent majority is doing, the silent majority, to your point, Tuncer, it's just automating a lot of this kind of dull, mindless stuff out of your life, and handling the stuff that, essentially kind of like almost like a personal assistant that's plugged into your computer can do. And that is, and people see that as being very useful. So I think that especially in Alberta, where we have some of the best researchers in the world, some of the best talent, with the Amy Institute downtown, whose remit is to help businesses put AI and power their systems. All the pieces are here, right here in the province, to be able to use AI for good. We've just got to try and find the right balance.
Yeah, no. 100%. And, kind of taking a step back for a sec, looking at GDC and DICE, kind of open it back up to everyone here in terms of who attended from this group, and, was any other takeaways to provide that, from that Alberta lens?
I went to GDC and it was a great experience. I always love GDC. I get so creatively inspired when I'm at it. I always come back and I'm like, bosses, we got to make like 17 games right now. And they're like, all right, Amber.
Yeah.
Slow your roll. And two of the things that stood out to me quite a lot was I did go to a couple seminars on AI and gaming. And the main takeaway from one was about creating pipelines, and one was about using AI to innovate on genre, which was really interesting. And the takeaway I got was the idea that AI alone is not an innovative enough tech to make a game interesting. Your game has to have a foundation of interest that will appeal to a gamer that the AI can support. And I thought that was really interesting. There was a couple of publishers who basically said, we get regular pitches of this is a game, but it's got AI, and all the NPCs can like talk endlessly, but they don't really have much to say. And after the novelty wears off, there isn't much substance under there. So think about what it is you're trying to accomplish with your game, and where the fun point is that your players are going to react to, and how does AI support you developing that game. And then the second point was this idea of disruption, the idea that we've come off sort of a boom during COVID when people were stuck at home and were buying games all over the place. And there was a lot of innovation and a lot of people being able to be sort of productive in the industry, and then into this sort of a slope afterwards where people are out and about again. They're not spending as much. There's economic concerns that we can't necessarily keep relying on the same sorts of marketing initiatives to reach players. We can't rely on, 10-year-old market research of what gamers really want to play. And we can't expect that the frameworks of how games reach players, for example, major platforms like Steam, are going to be global and reactive enough to get our games to the people who want to buy them. And those were the two sort of things that I had buzzing in my head as I left San Francisco that have stuck with me.
Nice. Anyone else?
So I didn't go to GDC, but I spoke to a lot of people who did.
Right.
I was lucky enough to kind of be in that loop. And it absolutely, what you said at the top of the podcast resonates really true, which is this idea that we have to do more with less. And Amber, to your point about, people's spending habits are coming out of the pandemic. Obviously, everyone's at home. But then since then, we've seen inflation, we've seen global instability, we see like, those once in a lifetime things that are only supposed to happen once a generation, and we've kind of just seen 7 of them back to back. So coming out of that, obviously people's purses are a little tighter. There's a lot of kind of like concern about buying a $100 game or a AAA game is a major expense. So you see people congregating back to the things that they know. It's quite funny actually. If you look at the number of hours played across the games industry, I think it went up 2%. Like I think we're actually, in terms of like, people are still playing games, they're still finding the time, but what they're doing is they're going back to either the games that they already know because they know they're going to get value from it, or they're going for these kind of indie AA titles where they can spend $20 or $10 and get 10, 15, 20 hours and feel satisfied. I'm currently hooked on Balatro, and I've spent a lot more time in Balatro than 10 or 20 hours, to the point where I watch other people on YouTube play Balatro to make myself better. But I think that this is what we've seen. Like the pattern is that there's a kind of resurgence of the indie and the AA. Especially, it's never been a better time to be a game developer in terms of technology and Unreal and a Unity. Like, you can build stuff out of the box so fast. But it's never been a worse time to release a game, because unless you've got like an IP or a novel distribution or some kind of technological advantage, you're not going to get attention. So the major thing that I'm hopeful for is that Alberta, generally speaking, I think we have, at the last count, I could be wrong on the numbers here, but they're kind of indicative. Then we have about 80 game studios, and of those, it's about 800 people. Obviously, with EA BioWare being a large chunk of that in downtown Edmonton, and then kind of Beamdog, Shifty Eye, only by midnight you've got like a decent sized team, and then there's a bunch of like micro teams, like 1, 2, 3, 5 people. That's the right kind of mix of developers to build in this market. So if we can somehow supercharge them, we've got the right people. It's certainly the right market for it. We've just got to try and figure out how to get our name out there. And so that's what I took away from GDC, is that while there's a global pullback a little bit on kind of the larger scale budgets, there's also an opportunity, and an opportunity that developers here in Alberta could probably do well from.
Good.
I also didn't go to GDC, mainly because we are just laser focused on finishing our game.
Right.
So
Fair.
we didn't go to GDC. We're not going to Gamescom. We're kind of pushing to hopefully announce our game by the end of the year, and then we'll see what shows we go to next year.
Exciting.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, next up, going to go through a quick news flash of headlines from the past 6 months, and definitely want to get some of the thoughts from this group from some of those. And I think definitely one headline is of interest that I might get your reaction and thoughts, Tuncer. So we'll dive right in. First off, obviously, with Shifty Eye Games raised $580,000, brought on heavyweight advisors, and teased a stealth adventure game tied to a global movie franchise. Looking at you, Tuncer, curious about that one. Next up, we got Calder Interactive announced the Rabbit Hall tower defense meets cozy farming sim, slated for PC and Switch in 2026, after winning a pitch contest back in 2024. Global Game Jam was buzzing in Edmonton, Calgary, and Lethbridge. Props to Edmonton Unlimited, the Walkthrough Collaborative Center, and the Lethbridge Game Dev Guild for showing up as hosts. And we saw a masterclass helping studios level up their pitch game. Great example of elevating your skills. And the Canadian Interactive Alliance report dropped and showed Alberta at just 2% of Canada's IDM workforce. Rookie numbers, to say the least, but plenty more to go. Plenty of work to do. And sadly, we also saw layoffs at BioWare and New World Interactive. A reminder that the local scene is growing, but still fragile. Now, I'll open it up to all of you to add thoughts. I think, Tuncer, I'll start with you. What does this mean for Shifty Eye Games as far as where you're at in that journey? You're building a game, you're working on it, heads down, working on that right now. But talk about that significance of that money raised and bringing on those advisors to help guide the studio going forward here.
Yeah, for sure. So we were awarded last year from the Canadian Heritage Foundation. It was actually $788,000 Canadian dollars, just 580 US. And so that was an export grant that we got. We've also participated in Shred. We've also had help from Alberta Innovates as well, which is really cool. Something that just got approved, which we'll be announcing soon as well. So yes, I mean, we've definitely taken advantage of a lot of the grants and kind of things that we have available for us as Canadians, which is really cool. It kind of shows the level of support that we have in the gaming industry as far as building studios and doing making games and whatnot. So that's definitely one part of it. And there's also the raising money side of it, which is something that we're kind of doing right now as we're kind of getting closer to shipping the game. But overall, I just want to say that it's been incredibly helpful. It's also been incredibly enlightening that the amount of kind of resources that are available for indie type studios such as ours to kind of take advantage of those grants or tax breaks, et cetera, et cetera. So if any indie studios, there's another one that we didn't take advantage of, the media one, CMF, right?
Right.
CMF
Canada
is
Media
another
Fund.
one.
Yeah.
That we didn't end up using, but I know a lot of studios also use.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, I think my message for indie studios, definitely explore all those avenues that are kind of available for you, because it definitely can help you kind of get off the ground.
For sure. Absolutely. Yeah, I guess, funding, raising capital,
Yeah.
grants. I feel like that's a whole other discussion
is.
for sure.
It
Chris,
is.
we can chat about that. But
Yeah.
but yeah, Tuncer,
But the
no.
advisory role, I think that's
Yeah.
another thing. So
Right.
I started out my career in Chicago at Bungie Software, and I started out on the kind of marketing side of things and eventually drifted over to production, and then eventually became a project lead on a few titles. And so that was kind of my journey through there. And so my boss at the time was Alexander Seropian, who was one of the founders at Bungie Software. So he's on our advisory board. And another gentleman, Vikas Gupta, he ran a company out of Toronto named Trans Gaming that eventually sold to NVIDIA, some NVIDIA, small company. So anyway, so I brought him on board as well. Just two really brilliant guys that I can lean on and get some advice on and whatnot. And then the last person is Justin Ratuzniak. He's here in Calgary, and he's the one who's actually helped us with a lot of the grant money and loans and things like that. So he runs a company out of Calgary called Asgard Consulting, and just been so all these guys have been tremendous assets for us as far as having an advisory board. Very, very helpful, by the way.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. My ears perked when you said you came from like marketing background, because I'm currently working in marketing, and broadcasting is my background. So it's nice to be among similar minds, but the work you're doing is certainly fantastic, and glad to hear that, you have that extra force in your corner to continue to guide and really help, fill in those gaps where, whether it's time or just expertise, they're able to support with those areas. But
Absolutely.
yeah, awesome. Chris, anything to dive in on
Huge,
some of these
huge
headlines?
amounts of things to dive into here.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's funny. I got to see the Global Game Jam for about 17 minutes because I was dropping something off at Edmonton Unlimited as it was happening, and unfortunately I couldn't stay. But I think I was there on day one, and people had like running prototypes of. I think if I remember correctly, the theme was bubbles, or something like that. And people have these running prototypes of like there was one where you were a character and you let go of gas, which created bubbles and then moved you around a scene and stuff like that. But I was always kind of like amazed at how quickly people can get things working now. And the point of a game jam isn't really to actually build a shippable game. The point of a game jam is to kind of like network and kind of prove yourself under pressure. But also it's about constraints. Can you build something really focused, really fast to achieve a very specific goal? And seeing the quality of the products that came out of that, there's a really good Instagram post out of Edmonton Unlimited that kind of just showed kind of sort of the end, and they've got them up on the big screen, and you wouldn't have thought these games took 2 days to make. Okay, some of them obviously you would, but some of them you look at them and thinking, wow, that's 2 days, that's pretty genius. And And so it just goes to show just the level of talent. And I have to call out like the post-secondary here in Alberta as being like really, really punching above its weight. Like Lethbridge Polytechnic and some of the VR and XR stuff that they've done. Some of the things I've heard, like they've actually built simulations that have been used by the government. You know, we've got the U of A and Nate. Nate has an incredible media presence right now, and they're pushing really hard. They're going to be at GameCon Canada, I think, doing a panel today. Obviously, this is going to be recorded and pushed out there, so that's not going to be useful for anyone. But but it just kind of like there's a level of commitment between like the post-secondary organizations and kind of the associations as well that we need to firm up and continue to push on. And like when I think about what Caldera have done. Like Caldera, there's so it's funny. I actually when I went to AGS last year, I got a lift off Kyle from ITZY, and Isael was there as well. And we went down together, and hearing the story about how that came together, and it's very much that bootstrap story of we're just going to keep going until we make it, and they did. And so that's like a market ready game a game coming to market, not just because we wanted to make a game, but because they really thought about like what does the market need, what could we build, how are we going to get the funding, and pulled it all together. And that's a huge success story. So seeing so much activity, even in the midst of one of the harder times in the video games industry that I've seen, is really heartening.
Amber, I haven't forgotten about you. Don't worry. When it comes to Only by Midnight, of course, but we got a headline of what's coming up currently in the right now for that. But leading up in the last few months at the start of 2025, we've run off a few headlines already. Just get your thoughts on any of those, or in conjunction with your times thus far with Only by Midnight.
Yeah, it's, it shows that there are still high moments and still low moments. We are still seeing those big layoffs. We are still seeing people struggling a little bit to get ahead in the industry. It's always been tough. It feels extra tough sometimes lately, but we're also seeing these great successes. I mean, big congratulations, Tuncer. That's a huge amount of funding to secure. 100% agree. The Caldera guys are amazing. I actually did consult with them on their CMF application. So I feel like, I got a little tiny stake in their success.
Yeah.
And it's funny because they made a blog post and talked about the process of going through CMF, and they gave me like a little shout out. And I had someone contact me this last intake saying, hey, I saw Caldera mentioned you and I'm also submitting to CMF. And it's one of my favorite things to do is just sit down for an hour with people kind of gratis and give them my perspective on the creative writing side of CMF applications as a way to kind of keep reaching out in the industry and keep supporting like these local Alberta studios. I don't do the financial side because numbers scare me, but as the writer, I also kind of get swept up into the marketing side of things. And yeah, there's still opportunities out there. So
for sure. No, 100%. And that future episode here around funding and grant applications, Amber, I think I'm going to invite you back because I think there's lots to unpack, and love to get your firsthand
I have so much
experience. Yeah, let's do it because I want to be conscious of time for this episode for sure, and this update in particular, but nevertheless definitely want to have you back and let's dive a little deeper on that and to get your firsthand experience. And we can talk about Caldera as well as any other interactions you've had with other studios. So I think definitely want to have you back on and have our good friends at Digital Alberta maybe help facilitate some joint conversation as well of what they're also hearing in the industry when it comes to funding and investment. But I think that wraps up that segment. We're moving on to what's happening right now in present day, real life, online. We got, of course, to start off, Control-Alt-Deal from Only by Midnight, gearing up for launch. Already snagged Best Gameplay from CG Magazine. Expect indie chaos and corporate sabotage in one delicious package.
I'm going to put that on my wish list right now.
Let's
do
it.
Anyone else who's also listening in.
Yes. Wish list that right now.
Yes.
I would have screen shared, but it's okay. But speaking of media, still not convinced, we can check out the game trailer here. Or Beamdog unveils Myth Force 1.2, a free new update packed with class switching, elemental combos, and smoother gameplay. That all drops June 26th. And lovely quote from Beamdog CEO Trent Oster said it best. A true labor of love turned up to 11. Bold, magical, and wildly fun. Thanks for that quote, Chris. Really appreciate that.
I have to say, the on the Myth Force side, like I grew up with those cartoons.
Yeah.
And the minute I saw that, I'm like, this is a game for me. This is a game for me. Like I've watched those for years, and that art style, I'm so surprised that other developers hadn't tapped into that at this point. And so hearing that there's a big update coming is really good.
Definitely good. June is also, of course, the 15th anniversary of Beamdog launching their distribution service. Moving over to Nightingale from Inflection Games. They just upgraded and coming out with some fresh more updates soon, starting with an upgrade to Unreal Engine 5.4 and is expected to bring additional updates and enhancements like rooftops, house-to-house action, and sewers to explore. Definitely lots more fun to come. And of course, Shifty Games continues to cook up behind the scenes. They're beta testing right now, if I'm not believe Tuncer, if that's correct. Yeah,
I got my wish list in. Sorry.
Oh no.
I'm on my mobile getting. I'm on
you are
control,
you are
alt.
committed. Yeah,
I am committed. I'm
that
gonna
is
do
commitment.
this.
I love
Yeah,
this.
for sure.
He's looking it up on Steam right now.
All set. All set. So yes.
All
we are
set.
in alpha testing. If anyone's interested,
Yep.
just go to our website, shiftygames.com. It's a news article there. That takes you to our Discord. And then from there you can apply, which is really cool. And by the way, all of our testing is on Discord, everything. We use this tool called Beta Hub that was recently released. It's super cool because you can integrate it within your game. So you can do screenshots, recording, bug reports, everything through the game, but also through the Discord. It all connects together, which is really awesome.
Yeah.
And then so we have discussions on there. People play the game. We give them specific levels to do. We do surveys. Everything is done through Discord, which is absolutely amazing. And it's really, really cool. Super useful tool.
I love integrations.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, no, perfect. Well, moving over to Titan One Studios, they just announced Cat Assassin with Dave Bautista voicing the lead. According to Hardcore Gamer, Cat Assassin is a new neo-noir action game featuring a cat inspired by popular franchises like Assassin's Creed and Splinter Cell. Well, I'm already sold because I love Assassin's Creed. The game is expected to offer a balance of humor, action, and stealth in a gritty underworld narrative. To quote Spock, fascinating. And this weekend, as we're recording this update, GameCon Canada, as Chris mentioned earlier, GameCon Canada 2025 is happening down at the Edmonton Expo Center. Cosplay, demos, tabletop gaming, esports tournaments, and much more. Plus, not to mention, Nate is even running a session on nurturing the next generation of game talent. Of all these launches and updates, I think we all know what we're all excited about, but nevertheless, any other exciting moments to highlight, whether we mentioned it or not here?
Well, I think
right
that
now.
like just to dive in on the Titan One Studios and Dave Bautista, like of all the things I was expecting, like Dave Bautista voicing a cat assassin and bringing that level of like Hollywood to the province, is a real nice bonus. I mean, we had The Last of Us recorded here not too long ago. I think it was like 2 or 3 years ago. And we don't really often in the province get to see too much of like that kind of like Hollywood sheen. So having a studio here actually kind of land, a huge name. We talked at the beginning about like, attention, craft, business, and opportunity. Like this is a huge thing for attention for the province and a huge thing for Cat Assassin as well. Right. You don't get names much bigger than Dave Bautista.
No, 100%. Anyone else? Amber, Tuncer, any? Obviously, I hit the major highlights for you guys. It's super exciting nonetheless. Yeah, I guess just any further deep dive to what's going on, Amber, with the game.
Yeah, we're just really excited. We're all head down right now at Only by Midnight getting the last bits of Control Alt Deal ready for launch this summer and hoping to announce the exact date soon. It's, one of my favorite expressions is that the first 90% of a project takes 90% of the time, and then the last 10% of the project also takes 90% of the time. And that's kind of where we are right now. Just this
Fair.
every little bit and piece. We got to go through search, and we got to get all the localization in, and we got to X, Y, and Z. So it's been busy but fun. And it's really great to see the team pulling together. Starting to see some great, recognition. You mentioned last year at GCC, we got the Best Gameplay Award from CG Magazine, which was amazing. Thank you for that. And then last year we were at PAX West in Seattle, and we were selected to be part of the PAX Rising Showcase, as well as a PAX Together selection for our inclusivity. So that was extremely honoring. And we were also at PAX East just last month. And having people just come up to the booth and play the game, like I'm sure right now our team's at GCC watching people come up and try the demo, and the excitement as people are like, what is this game? It's, it's a game where you are a sentient piece of spyware trying to make deals with sad humans to escape from a dystopian megacorp. Like it's not a very intuitive sort of game loop. And watching people really get it, especially people that we didn't necessarily think were our target audience, we're picturing that 12 and up was sort of our target, and seeing even like younger kids really getting into it was really fun. Seeing couples, like people playing in groups, even though it's a single player game, was really exciting. And a big milestone for us this last Thursday, like 2 days ago, was we finalized our credits, and we got to see like a little credit roll at the end of the game. And it was a bit verklempt, just seeing all the people who have worked on and tested and assisted and supported was pretty humbling. So yeah, exciting summer coming up for us, and we can't wait to see Control Alt Deal out there. We're in Next Fest right now, so with our demo and everything. And
Awesome.
yeah, I'm going to be just getting by on coffee, I think, for the next 6 weeks or so.
Fair. For me,
think
it'd be having an IV with an energy drink of something. So
It is one of the prettiest games. I mean, I've played it as well at AGS,
you.
and the fact that you can solve things in multiple ways really kind of makes you think. But it is so pretty, like the color palette and the way the cutouts work, and like even when you're hovering your mouse over the cards, it's like there's so much craft in that game.
Thank you.
love it. And Tuncer, Project G, if I'm saying that right.
Yeah.
It's major movie franchise. I'll only ask once. Any more you can tell us? Just some.
Not at the moment.
Okay.
Just
Figured I'd ask.
Yeah, I mean, we've been working on this title basically since COVID hit, like 2020. Wow. We started out with, myself and a programmer, and an artist, and worked through the prototype, and then started adding people. And the focus of the game actually went from mobile to consoles and PC. So the scope of the game became much larger. There were some delays with the movies, I think that's okay to say. And so that kind of gave us a little bit more time to kind of really flesh out this game and kind of have a grander scale for it, right?
Right.
And so, yeah, I mean, we're now up to, I believe, 23 full-time employees, but we have over 40 with contractors and somewhere around like over 50 with everything else, like outside resourcing and stuff like that. So yeah, we've completed the majority of the mechanics, we've completed the majority of the levels, and now we're giving it out to testers to kind of get feedback on it, and then we're just starting all the polish stuff, right? Polish. It's going to be a long process because it is a big game. There's 22 levels in there. There's cutscenes and music, and the gameplay. Just one of the cool things that we found when we gave it to our testers, we had them sign an NDA, but when we gave it to testers, they played what the game is normally like, and then we gave them levels where it's completely different. And that really surprised people. And the thing that we got out of it is that they loved the scope of the game, right? It wasn't just your traditional, like, okay, I'm going to play as this character throughout the whole thing. We varied up quite a bit. And I just want to say something about being indie. That's what's really cool about being indie, is that you can take risks. And my first mindset with this game was like, I'm not going to go down the typical path of just, create a game and use our art throughout and, use the same mechanics. It's not that. And that's what's really cool about the indie space these days is that people are taking risks. and it's something that differs from the bigger studios where they're just, love some of the bigger studio games, but they're a bit formulaic, right? And so that's where I think that the indie scene is really shining, and it's really inspiring to see all these other studios in Alberta kind of doing the same thing, right? It's just a bunch of like innovation, which is great. So yeah. So anyway, Project G, we're hoping to announce it by the end of this year and shipping sometime in 26. It'll be on PC, Mac, PlayStation, Xbox, and the Switch too. So
Exciting.
yeah.
So you're in the second 90% then.
Yeah, and that's honestly that's the hardest part, right? Because there's just so many things that you either hadn't thought of, or that the level of polish that you sometimes have to do per level, per character, the sound and music, everything kind of starts coming together, the UI UX, and it's just a lot of work for sure.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I look forward to having the opportunity maybe to catch up with you once more details are released, to do a bit of a deeper dive. I think you've worked with a contractor, Paisley. Churchill.
Paisley Churchill.
So, yeah. So her and I were connecting and seeing if we could set something up just to have you and I chat around this time. So this actually worked out even better because I feel like you can see whether or not you want to keep talking to me or whatever the case. But
for sure,
nevertheless, looking forward to it.
Paisley's great. She has this like energy and spunk that is just it's amazing and it's energizing. And every time I talk to her, I just get inspired. So she's fantastic. She's like a rising star in Alberta. I mean, she should run for mayor and premier one day because she has that tremendous amount of energy. She's really cool.
Yeah, definitely a familiar face and name with Digital Alberta for sure. So good to see her journey trajectory thus far. Yeah, no, exciting stuff. Thank you so much for sharing those remarks, guys. Moving on to what the future holds. Looking at Q3 the next few months. Lots to keep an eye on for sure. With Digital Alberta, of course, we have an IP masterclass dropping pretty soon here in July, led by DA board member Bruna Klinowski, if I'm pronouncing that one right. And we also have GDX 2025 hitting July 16th to 17th. Their focus is on games and AI talent and research innovation at the indie level, exploring the challenges and triumphs of diverse people working in games, and of course, building a better games industry. So look forward to that. That also coincides with K-Days here in Edmonton. And of course, Alberta Game Jam was teased. No theme or dates yet, but everyone's, of course, already super hyped. It's where students, job seekers, hobbyists, and professionals come together and meet to showcase skills, experiment with new ideas, taking risks, and collaborate with like-minded people. And as part of this call, of course, Digital Alberta Game Series is back, and it's in the City of Champions here in Edmonton. And I'll pass it over to Chris just to provide any other major update when it comes to Alberta Game Series for 2025.
Yeah, so this is this is the first year that I've been involved directly in kind of organizing, and I think that as we said at the beginning of the podcast, there's definitely an opportunity here for Alberta-based developers to really flourish in the market that we've currently got. And even to go back to a point that we didn't touch on, obviously there's been layoffs and things like that in this market. But what I've seen like multiple studios of very talented people come together, and they've decided, well, you know what, I'm going to do it myself. I'm gonna go out there and I'm gonna build something, and I'm gonna do it with people that I know that are talented. So what we want to do more than anything else is support exactly that movement, that kind of like sustainable indies, pushing more studios up to that AA. Nobody's writing AAA checks right now. Like I think I saw a stat recently that said that I don't think a AAA level check has been written in the games industry for like 6 months or something like that. Although, exactly, it's a market reset. And just like, the City of Champions, we were champions for a while, and then that kind of went away a little bit, and then now it's kind of coming back. I think these things happen in cycles. So for AGS this year, those 4 pillars are what we're focusing on, and we're doing. There's one major thing, I guess, to announce, and I'm hoping that the actual announcement happens while you're editing this, so I don't jump the gun.
For sure. For
But
sure.
we are moving AGS to coincide with Startup Week, Edmonton Startup Week. And so we'll be on the Tuesday and the Wednesday that week. And the whole purpose of that is that you have this incredible amount of like investors and technologists, and you have a huge network of like interesting people, and it's all about entrepreneurship, and it's all about kind of new startups and new things happening in the province and the city. And so what better place, especially with the market as it is right now, to bring some of the best talent in Alberta to a place where they can meet with those entrepreneurs, with those investors, with those those VCs. And it's interesting, it's much easier to attract the VC talent as well, and the VC scouts, because they can come not just for AGS but also for the wider show. And see what's going on in like AI and clean tech and biotech and things like that. So by moving it there, we're hoping to provide opportunity. Opportunity is one of our 4 pillars, so having it here increases the chance that somebody gets a deal. Likewise, we know that Alberta has traditionally had a bit of a weird split between kind of the AAA developers and the kind of indies and AAs. And this year, I'm in talks with studios, talent from studios that you would recognize, kind of like Fortnite team, Sony Santa Monica, various other like big name people who are going to hopefully, they've said verbally that they'll do it, but I've yet to get the contract signed. But they want to come and talk about things like, how do you create a top level AAA technology team? And like, what are the things that they look out for in terms of talent? What is the best way to convey emotion to another human being through a digital screen? Like, there's some really big expertise out there that we can bring together and then connect like the next generation of game studio with some of the old guard that really know what they're talking about. And so that's a really good one on our craft our craft push. And then, of course, business and opportunity side, having more involvement from the local scene is always going to be helpful. And so we're partnering actually with Edmonton Unlimited and Amy. So Edmonton Unlimited are going to allow us to use their space on the Tuesday, and then the Wednesday we're going to go over to Amy, and that's going to be a great partnership, because then that's their business acumen, AI, facilities to have like those kind of opportunistic conversations. Also, if we were, say, for example, to do a pitch competition while all the interested parties are in town, what better place to practice than Edmonton Unlimited, who help hundreds of startups every year figuring out how to get their business across in the shortest possible time. One of my favorite phrases is, I would have wrote a shorter letter, but I didn't have time. Edmonton Unlimited can help you write shorter letters. And so all these great partners... Pitching. It's one of those things where I think that what we're seeing here, especially with AGS, is a lot of the ecosystem coming together. And then not long after AGS is Game Invest West, which I think travels. Last year it traveled down through Edmonton and Calgary and then over to Banff. And so if we've got more developers prepped, ready to pitch, they've had the practice at AGS, and they can just cycle over to Game Invest West and do the same thing again and again. You've got companies like Scaffold and Shred who will absolutely help you get that ready. And so the ecosystem, there's a lot of opportunity here. It's more a case now of trying to figure out how to take advantage of it and making sure that we do create sustainable companies here, because the last thing we want to do is flame out. And so that's what AGS is about this year. And if we can get the talent, if we can get the big names in, that will draw the attention. The attention helps draw even bigger names in, and then we can mingle with some video game royalty, hopefully. That'd be nice.
I'm pumped. Having worked at Edmonton Unlimited for almost about a few years a while back, I was always thrilling to try and figure out like, how can we get games more integrated and embedded within Startup Week, and you guys figured it out. So kudos to you, Chris, and of course the team at Digital Alberta to forge these relationships, these partnerships with Edmonton Unlimited and Amy to go bigger this year with Alberta Game Series, of course, back in the city of Champion. So I'm a little biased. I love that. Great to have it back in Edmonton this year with tracks around, of course, as we alluded to, attention, craft, business, and opportunity. So super stoked for that. And I'm still available if you want to do a panel or podcast episode thing. We'll
100%.
talk.
We'll
If I
talk.
can, if it's all full this year, it's all good. I'll wait for next year. It's all good for 2026. But yeah, that's AGS 2025, and of course, finally we have the Game Awards, where will we see Alberta indies featured this year on the big stage? Fingers crossed. Yeah, that's it. Anything to add on what's ahead, or thoughts on some of the headlines that we've touched?
Well, you mentioned pitching, Chris, and when I was at GDC this year, I was actually pitching for our next game in development, which is still a secret. And I love pitching. I think it's an art form, and I'm really enthusiastic about it. So would absolutely love to brainstorm on pitch stuff. And then talking about the Game Awards, I get a lot of my wish lists and my to be played list from Game Awards because I want to see what the hype is about. And when I pitched our next game in development to Jen and Allison, my bosses at Only by Midnight, I pitched it as Project Amber Wants to Win a BAFTA. And so that was the working title for the first few months. And I was pitching it at GDC and meeting with some interest. So keep an eye on the Game Awards, and maybe Project Amber Wants to Win a BAFTA will come to light in a few years.
I hope I don't butcher this story because I'm doing this from a memory of about 4 years ago. But I will tell you about a story about one of the greatest pitches I've ever heard. So I'm going to play a little bit loose with this because I'm not entirely sure I remember all the details, except for the big part. And so there was a team that were pitching a game that was essentially a game about robbing banks, right? Think like your Payday, and they were kind of coming in and they were doing the usual thing of like 10 slides, and we're going to try and get it across, and for whatever reason it just wasn't really landing. And so the person pitching, and I can't remember exactly who it was, but hearing the story third hand, I can quite imagine that this would be quite dramatic. They decided, we've got to be memorable. So what they did is they went and got a duffel bag and got a bunch of Hollywood money, like the $100 bills, and wrapped up. And then they filled the duffel bag with Hollywood money. And when they went to the pitch, they walked through the door and they said, "Okay, what's the game about?" And they got the duffel bag out and just emptied the money onto the table and said, "That's what the game is about." And apparently, I can't remember. I can't remember if it actually got funded, but it certainly was remembered, right? Because the story was passed to me third hand about like, this is how you get attention. And so it's funny. There's all these little tricks. They're like, be memorable. Like, have a pitch that people is evocative. Like, the smell and the feel of money is very evocative. Like, if you can use that to get your attention, then. And so I think that as we kind of move towards AGS, like that's where I'm thinking. I'm thinking like I know some projects that haven't yet been announced from some friends and some people, friends of friends, and just thinking about like, how can we make it so that when these investors and these kind of game publishers and they come to AGS and they go through that pitch, it's just gold after gold after gold, like memory after memory after memory. Because more than anything else, I think the big challenge that we've got at Digital Alberta, the big thing that we want to push for, is we want Edmonton and Calgary and Lethbridge and Red Deer and all these kind of little hubs, we want to be on the map, right? There's so much talent. Like the market is crying out for more indie AA titles. So we know that this is kind of like the kind of rough project range. And on top of that as well, the offshoots of like the BioWare kind of like developers, like there's so many of those developers now who have kind of come from that kind of like BioWare stable, who are now setting up their own shops that I know of, because I was a BioWare a decade ago. And you can see that kind of that storytelling, that talent, that kind of craft, but now being done at like this scale. And so if we play it right in the next 2 or 3 years, we could see an explosion of that kind of talent here. And all we've got to do is nurture it. We've got to work together to nurture it. And if we do that, then the whole province wins. Like if we could take that number, I think it was 2%. I actually might be wrong. I think it was actually 3%. I think I was 1% off. So apologies. I had to go and read the kayak report again.
No worries.
But if that went from 3 to 6 in the next 5 years, that would be a huge win for the province. And the government has made a fairly strong stance on what they want in terms of like to support the sector. And what they really want is they want to help us bring investment in. Calgary's doing a fantastic job of that right now. They're in the news as like one of the central tech hubs in the entire world in terms of like investment flowing in. And Alberta in general is doing like really good numbers. And Minister Glubish, he comes from a VC background and understands this kind of market exceptionally well. So I think that we want to work along the same lines. Like, let's make AGS a destination for investors in games and publishers and talent, and go big or go home. hopefully not go home.
No,
Yeah,
no,
let's
not go home. Only for a spare
have
charger.
I have a similar story to Chris that so when I was at Bungie, I think I was like employee number 6 or 7 or something along those lines. Very small at the time, and we were coming out with this, with one of our games. Again, I don't remember, but one of the things that Alex did, as he was kind of, back then we would send out the CDs for people for press to play the game and talk about it and all that kind of stuff. So he's like, we're not just going to send out the CD, we're going to do some creative. And so he went out and went to this army supply store and bought ammo boxes from like either the Vietnam era or something along those lines. And we end up putting all the press material in there. So the CD, and T-shirts and, other kind of stuff like that. And guess what? When, PC Gamer and all these other magazines back in the day got these ammo boxes, they're like, what's in here? Some of them actually called us and went, did you guys send us something dangerous? Like, no, it's fine. Just open it, right? So they opened it, and they even mentioned it when they were doing their sneak previews and reviews and stuff like that. So it just brings me back to that kind of like innovative, aggressive, taking risk kind of approach to gaming, which is something that again, when I see all these studios doing it and they're doing it in Alberta, and it's really inspiring. It's really cool to see. So just wanted to put in that little tidbit in there.
Yeah. That's how I want to receive all my packages now.
Right? In an ammo box.
Yeah. Just have a closet full of ammo boxes to hand out that. Yeah, well, I guess that's all I have. If anyone else has anything else they want to toss in, whether it was a story, love those firsthand stories and memorable moments. But if there's if that's all we have, then I think that will be a wrap for this first ever. Oh, Chris,
I have one thing. I have one thing.
more.
So,
Okay.
I always like a
One
call
more
to
thing.
action coming out of a podcast.
Feels like
And
Apple keynote.
And so I guess as we're planning AGS,
Yes.
we've had an idea for a talk, but we want to figure out whether or not we should do it. Right?
Okay.
Okay, yeah. So the talk is called "This Is How We Shipped It," and essentially we're gonna get on stage. We're gonna put on some smooth jazz, some calming music in the background. So if you think elevator music, okay, everyone gets zen, and then we want to bring game developers to the front, and they can talk about the thing that they did to ship the game. And then the audience gets to vote. Does that developer go to developer jail, or do they get a pass because it was okay? And so, like, there's a bunch of examples, like certainly from my career, of like horrible last-minute things that we did just to get the game on the disc. And the point of this is to kind of talk a little bit about like sometimes you have to go a little bit off piece to get things done, and that's okay, right? Because these massive titles. Turns out some of the things that in the background are basically like like a western where it's all facades and kind of like spit the sawdust type thing. And so what I want to know from the audience is like, A, would that be an interesting and compelling thing to listen to? Just basically 45 minutes of developers confessing their sins. And B, are there any game developers out there with excellent stories that we could use at AGS to kind of let people know, hey, it's okay. Sometimes you just got to get it out. So that
I'm
would be
no
a wonderful
developer,
follow.
but that sounds cool.
Yeah,
awesome. I mean,
hopefully.
they say that perfect is the enemy of the good,
Yep.
or something like that. So sometimes you do just have to get out the door. Not us, of course, we're perfect, but other studios I've heard.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
I mean, I guess I'll say something as well. Like,
Please.
one of the really exciting things that's happening within Alberta is the education that's happening. I think I mentioned this before, but the vast majority of our new hires are actually coming from colleges right in Alberta, right? Our last 2 hires were from Bow Valley College here in Calgary, right?
Nice.
And that just keeps happening over and over and over, which is kind of really cool. And the other thing I'll say is that these people are hungry. They're really hungry. You know, they want to be in the gaming industry. They want to succeed. They want to be part of something special. So for all of you, for all the everyone out there who wants to get into the gaming business, be hungry. I'll just leave
100%.
it at that.
100%.
Great.
Perfect. Yeah. Well, I'd say that's a wrap for the first ever Party Chat. From AI-powered pipelines to indie hits in the making, Alberta's scene is real, it's growing, and it's ready for more. Taking risks, be hungry, major takeaways, I'd say, for that. Quotable, clippable moments right there. Huge thanks to our collaborators at Digital Alberta, and of course to our guests, Amber, Tuncer, for pulling back the curtain on what's being built here in the space and your firsthand stories, memorable moments, and obviously just the start of more conversations and deeper dives. So thank you so much for joining us today. Really means a lot for this first new update that we're trying out with Chris and I between Good Game Edmonton and Digital Alberta. I'm really pumped, trying to kind of winging it. But again, we're getting it out the door. It's not perfect. It's going to be fun, but that's all part of the experience. So yeah, huge thanks to all three of you. Thank you so much. This really means a lot for sure.
Brilliant. I think, Amber, you said it perfectly. Perfect is the enemy of done. Got to keep on trucking.
Chris just wants this out the door like tomorrow, but I'm going to hold off because I know the AGS announcement hasn't happened yet. But yeah, for everyone out there, if you're tuning in from a dorm, dev studio, or co-working space, know that you're not just watching the scene evolve, you're part of it. Subscribe to Good Game Edmonton wherever you listen to podcasts, share this segment, and check out more of the show at goodgameyeg.ca. And thank you to all three of you. This is Party Chat. Sellarcast out.